Welcome to the Perinatal Wellness Podcast, a space dedicated to supporting your mental and emotional well-being through pregnancy and early parenthood. I'm Courtney Schroeder, a licensed therapist, perinatal mental health specialist, and fellow mom. If you're looking for practical tools, helpful guidance, and meaningful conversations to help you feel like yourself again and find more presence and joy in this season of life, you are in the right place. Now let's get into today's episode. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today for part 2 of our conversation about perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. So in the last episode, we talked about what perinatal mood and anxiety disorders are, or remember PMADs for short. We talked about common signs and symptoms and the risk factors for them. And I do encourage you to listen to that episode before moving on to this one. But for a brief refresher, the term perinatal refers to the time period from preconception, so this includes maybe someone trying to get pregnant or having fertility challenges, for example, through a year postpartum, and there are 7 mental health conditions that fall underneath the umbrella of PMADs, which include depression, bipolar disorder, and psychosis, and generalized anxiety disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, panic disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder. And PMADs are the most common complication of childbearing, which is why they're so important to talk about, identify, and address. Now, in today's episode, I want to dive into what we can do about these mental health conditions and how to create a path to better mental health during the perinatal period. We'll talk about what treatment options are available to you, and then the changes you can kind of make on your own in your day-to-day life to address these symptoms. And like we discussed in the last episode, I want you to keep in mind that mental health issues are on a spectrum. So even if you don't think you would necessarily meet full criteria for one of the mental health conditions that I've mentioned, but you do resonate with some of the symptoms that we've talked about, maybe you're worrying more than you would like, or you're having some days where you're just feeling really off or not like yourself. Maybe the stress of all of the change happening in your life is just feeling like it's getting really difficult to cope with. No matter where you're at, I think today's episode will absolutely still apply to you and provide you with some helpful next steps. So first up, we're going to talk about 3 different treatment options that research has shown to be helpful with this population: therapy, peer support groups, and medications. And I want to start off with therapy because today we're going to talk about a number of things you can implement to improve your mental health. But if you're feeling overwhelmed or not sure where to start, and you just want to begin with one thing that can make a difference, I encourage you to look into getting into therapy if you're not already. And this is because therapy, in addition to having its own benefits, which I'll discuss in a moment, can also serve as a wonderful foundation for all of the other steps we'll talk about. So whether it's deciding if you would like to explore medication, or getting recommendations for some peer support groups, or wanting to work with someone on making some changes in your daily routine or sleep or whatever it may be, a therapist can help either guide you through that or point you in the right direction with additional resources that would be tailored to your specific needs. So treatment-wise, they will be the ones spending the most time with you one-on-one and will get to know you best and can really be a partner in your healing journey. So in addition to that, what are some of the benefits of going to therapy during the perinatal period? Or what might you get out of it? Well, I could spend a whole episode on just that question, but here are some benefits. One is having a safe, non-judgmental person to express your thoughts and feelings to without judgment, and a space where you can say things you don't feel like you can say anywhere else without the fear that your feelings are going to be minimized or dismissed. Therapists, especially those with this specialization, know that the perinatal period is very complex and challenging, and having your experiences validated and normalized can be really beneficial. You can also learn coping strategies, new skills. You may be able to reflect on your own background and attachment style and see how that's impacting your key relationships, especially maybe with your partner or baby, and work on any changes that you would like to see there. Another benefit is learning new communication skills or ways to set boundaries, identifying triggering situations, reflecting on the thoughts you may be having that are contributing to your stress. You can also process unhealed wounds or traumas that may be impacting you, whether they happened during the perinatal period or maybe happened long ago but are still having an impact. Going to therapy can also be preventative care. I've had a number of folks I've worked with who have sought out therapy primarily because they've had an upcoming birth and postpartum period, and they wanted to have as many supports for them in place going into that to prevent mental health issues as much as possible. And as far as topics go, people may seek therapy during this time for anxiety, intrusive thoughts, depression or low mood, sleep concerns, general stress, body image issues, career concerns or returning to work after a baby, changes in your relationships, improving confidence and self-esteem, processing a traumatic birth experience or perinatal loss, coping with an unexpected or unwanted pregnancy, or stress related to parenting. So there really is a wide range of topics that people might seek therapy for. And if you have an established relationship with a trusted therapist, great, keep going. And if you're looking for a therapist for the first time, or maybe looking for someone new to work with, even if you're not new to therapy, you may consider looking for someone who specializes in the perinatal population or is certified in perinatal mental health. And you'll know if someone is if they have the letters PMHC after their name. And to find someone who specializes in this area, one option is to ask your OBGYN or midwife for recommendations because they likely already have some mental health providers who they may refer people to when they have positive screenings for mental health disorders at appointments. Another option is doing a search online for local practices or therapists near you. I would also recommend looking at the directory provided by an organization called Postpartum Support International. And unlike the name suggests, this is not just for support during the postpartum period, but all through the perinatal period. And they have a range of resources for both people seeking help and providers too. So on their website, they have a directory of providers who are certified in perinatal mental health, and I'll be sure to link that in the show notes if you would like to check that out and use that in your search. And when you're looking for a therapist, always keep in mind that it's totally okay to shop around. The relationship that you have with the therapist, your sense of trust and connection is an important factor in the healing process. So even if it looks like on paper you might be a good fit for someone, if you're still not feeling like it's a good match after a few sessions, don't be afraid to keep looking until you find someone that really feels like a good match for you. So moving on from therapy, let's talk about peer support groups, which are another wonderful way to get support during the perinatal period. So peer support groups and therapy groups are two different things. Peer support groups are often free and centered around sharing experiences, giving and receiving support, and decreasing isolation. And therapy groups are often centered around teaching specific skills or addressing more specific mental health issues, and they are often paid for by insurance or out of pocket. Both are wonderful, both are helpful, and I think something really valuable about the peer support groups for the perinatal time period is that there's a strong focus on community building and decreasing isolation, which is very important because social support is a huge deal during the perinatal time. Talking about what you're going through, especially with people going through the same thing, is powerful. And that sense of community is so important during big life transitions. And childbirth classes, breastfeeding support groups, and even mom groups at your local library are some other ways that you can build community with other people going through a similar phase of life. Now, to go about finding a peer support group, you can follow similar steps we talked about when looking for a therapist. So, one, you can talk to your providers for recommendations. You can search online for local ones available, especially if you're looking for something more in person, or you can look through the support groups offered by Postpartum Support International as well. And they have a ton of free virtual support groups that focus on all kinds of different issues and populations. And of course, I will have that linked in the show notes as well. And finally, for treatment options, let's touch base on medications. So, for some people, medications may be a really helpful part of their care plan, and there are a number of common medications used to treat a number of mental health conditions that are considered safe for both pregnancy and breastfeeding. And there can be a misconception that medications can't be used during the perinatal period, but for some people, not taking medication or going off of it can actually be more risky than having no medication due to the stress or symptoms associated with the underlying mental health condition they may have. So it's all about weighing the risks of taking medication with the risks of not taking medication. And often OBGYNs and nurse midwives are very familiar with appropriate medication options during this time. So they're a good place to start if you're interested in medication because they can prescribe it or assess whether or not working with a psychiatrist may be more helpful. And talking to your primary care provider is also an option for getting started as well. So that covers some of the treatment options that we know can be effective. So now let's pivot and discuss some other things you can do, maybe at home or on your own, that can also improve your mental health. So the great thing about these is that they're generally free or low cost, and they can make a change in how you feel relatively quickly. So first, let's talk about sleep. Sleep deprivation is hard, and it's not just about feeling sleepy and forgetful. It can actually start to feel like depression, bringing feelings of hopelessness, irritability, mood swings, and as we discussed in the last episode, sleep deprivation is a big biological risk factor for PMADs. So when it comes to sleep and mental health, we're of course not aiming for perfection, but looking to increase stretches of uninterrupted sleep if possible, especially during the postpartum period. So one study, which I'll link in the show notes, suggests that it can be both necessary and effective to protect a 4 to 5 hour stretch of uninterrupted sleep postpartum for the birthing parent, especially if they are having symptoms of mental health issues. And a few years ago, when I was pregnant and took a childbirth class, I remember one of the doulas also suggesting that a 4 hour stretch of uninterrupted sleep could be protective against postpartum depression. Now, aiming for this does take some planning ahead. If the baby wakes up, who is going to feed them? Do you need to pump to have milk available? If you are concerned about what a 4 to 5 hour stretch of sleep would do to your milk supply, do you need to speak with a lactation consultant? The reality is that getting some longer stretches of sleep will depend on the resources and help available to you. And so if this is an option for you, see if you can also capitalize on the times when you are naturally most tired to get that longer stretch of sleep. So if you are able to switch on and off with someone for watching the baby during the night, are you more likely to sleep deeply earlier in the night or later in the night? Personally, I always preferred having the earlier night shift to tend to my son and then sleep later. Earlier in the night, I was just too wired and it was too difficult for me to find a deep sleep. And keep in mind too, just with all of this, it does get better. Sleep does get better. As babies get older, they will sleep better and longer, and you will too. So it is temporary. So if you're really struggling to either fall asleep or stay asleep, even when the baby is sleeping during the night, so you are having opportunities to sleep, but it's just hard for you, I would recommend bringing this up to your midwife or OBGYN or therapist to find some solutions, because even getting a bit more sleep on a consistent basis can make a big difference. And it may be helpful to review some sleep hygiene tips as well. Often some of these things are things that we already know about, but maybe just don't want to do or find them difficult to do. For example, being off of our phones or not seeing a screen too close to bed. So if you're having trouble falling asleep, also maybe looking for some adjustments you could make there. Something like spending a few minutes perhaps reading a book instead of scrolling on your phone before bed can also potentially be helpful as well. So, the next thing that can be really helpful for your mental health is having some time for yourself. And if you are maybe pregnant but already have one or several children, or you're in the postpartum phase caring for your new baby, you likely already know how challenging it is to get time for yourself. So if you're rolling your eyes at the idea of somehow finding more time for yourself, I get it. And feeling like we can never have alone time, sometimes to the extent of not even being able to go to the bathroom or take a shower without being interrupted, can feel really suffocating. And you are worthy of that rejuvenating power of alone time and that time for your nervous system to settle. And sometimes that might look like lying in bed watching a show, or maybe picking up a coffee all by yourself and listening to your own music. If you don't know what to do, or maybe you feel this pressure for it to be this really great time and you feel paralyzed trying to figure out the best way to use that time, grab a snack, fill up your water bottle, and go to your room or a quiet place and just enjoy eating something without interruption. That's my recommendation. It can be anything though, and something is better than nothing. It absolutely does not need to be perfect. And if you have the urge to do a bunch of chores during that time, I do want to just say chores are very patient. No matter how long you keep them waiting, they will never get up and leave, and they will wait as long as it takes for you or somebody else to tend to them. Alone time, on the other hand, is different. So when the opportunity presents itself, please try to take that opportunity while you have it. So next, let's talk about nutrition and hydration. So our diet and our nutritional needs often change throughout the course of the perinatal period due to, nausea and vomiting during pregnancy, cravings, appetite changes that occur through pregnancy and while breastfeeding, and more. And drinking enough water and incorporating foods that can balance your blood sugar can help to reduce stress, fatigue, and irritability, and can even be helpful for balancing your hormones and improving your mood and your sleep. So, eating snacks and meals regularly, ensuring that you're getting enough protein and healthy fats in your diet, and limiting sugar and caffeine intake are all important parts of blood sugar balance. And for our last point here, let's discuss movement. So, when it comes to movement, we want to think about what's gentle and doable for your body and talking to your OBGYN or midwife about what is going to be appropriate for you. So often, a brief walk around the block can bring a mood boost due to the added benefits of fresh air and the change of scenery. And during those early postpartum days, it can feel like the days and nights are all blending together, and you're spending most of your days maybe confined to one or two rooms, often sitting, maybe hunched over. So being able to get out and move your body in a different way can be helpful. And even some gentle stretching can also help relieve some muscle tension and stress. So finding a form of movement that is safe for your body's needs wherever you're at in the perinatal period and is enjoyable for you can make a difference in how you feel, sometimes immediately, so it is a great tool to have in your toolbox. Okay, so we covered a lot today, so let's review. First, for treatment options, we talked about therapy, peer support groups, and medications, and how to get connected with all of these treatments. Then, for changes you can make yourself or at home, we talked about getting longer stretches of sleep, taking opportunities for time to yourself, staying hydrated and eating foods that will balance your blood sugar, and finding forms of movement or exercise that work for you. And as a reminder, all of the resources I've mentioned will be in the show notes, and I actually have a blog post on my website that goes over all of the information that we've talked about in these last two episodes about PMADs. So if you are a visual person or would just like something to refer to with all of these details, I will also have that linked in the show notes as well. So thank you so much for listening. I hope that this episode was helpful for you. And if you know someone who may benefit from this information, please feel free to pass it along. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.